coming off of perhaps one of the deepest night's sleep I've had in a very long time, since I was a wee lass, honestly. I think it's because I discovered melatonin and I was out for 16 hours. It worked. Talk to your doctor first. Don't blame me. All right, talk to your doctor. I say all that to say, hi, it's Kendall here. If you're new around here, well, welcome. If you're not new around here, what is up, home skillet biscuit? And happy Saturday. If you don't know what Saturday is on this here channel, Saturday is when I do a little something on my channel called Bad Movies and a Beat. Series on my channel where I talk about bad movies while putting my makeup on. And this week, we're going back to the sexy. As if we ever really left it, honestly. I said several bad movies and a beat ago that I feel like I'm doing a lot of like romance, hot and steamy movies because they're just so bad and they're just ripe with material. So why would I leave a good thing? Here we are again. Oh, well, I'll tell you why. It's always like a coin toss on whether or not that's gonna be monetized. And in times like that, you need protection. Internet protection. Sponsorship money. This video is sponsored. This video is sponsored by NordVPN, who is actually the VPN that I personally, prior to the sponsorship, subscribed to. So hey, here you go. NordVPN is a virtual private network that allows you to surf the internet with peace of mind and unparalleled protection. With double protection and malware block, you are able to keep your internet connection safe and secure. They're doing a huge discount on 2-year plans of NordVPN at nordvpn.com/Kennie. And then when you use my code Kennie, you'll get an extra month for free. Nord has a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you're not satisfied, then there's no risk involved. You can just get your money back, sis. But I think the best part that everyone loves is that you're able to access internet servers from 59 different countries, meaning that you can access Netflix from around the world. Personally, the two that I like to go into most is Canadian Netflix and Korean Netflix. Canadian Netflix has all the best things ever made. And then Korean Netflix, my Korean has really suffered. Over the last few years, it's bad. It's a fun time to go over there without subtitles. It's a fun time. Again, just head over to nordvpn.com/Kennie and use code Kennie to get 2 years plus 1 month on a huge discount. And of course, by clicking on the link down below, you also help out the channel. Big thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring today's video, and let's get on to the debauchery. Last week, we delved into the story that never needed to be made. The attack of the killer tomatoes. Truly just, oh my God, such a wash of unfunny. What do you expect from a movie called Attack of the Killer Tomatoes? And if you wanted to check that out, feeling the pain vicariously through me, feel free to check that out up above, or you can check it out in the Bad Movies and a Beat playlist. Okay, so this week, I've alluded to already that this week is a return to the more scandalous of film that we love so much in this series because they're ripe with content. That if I don't say a singular joke, there are plenty on their own, which I gotta appreciate, honestly. They're just pregnant with content, overwhelmingly so. They're not fun to watch. All right, they're never fun to watch. Crunchy booty sexy movies, my favorite. Well, those and psycho stalker movies. And this movie, I was under the impression was gonna be a little bit of both. And it's not really. It's not really. It's very little psycho stalker. It's more of just a really clumsy and ill-executed attempt at like psychological thriller. But it's not in any way compelling psychologically and is certainly in no way thrilling. It's actually incredibly boring. For if you read on paper what the movie is supposed to be about, you're like, oh, okay. Scandalous lesbian affair with the nanny. How did you make that boring? How do you make a non-story out of that? Today we're talking about another Netflix film. This movie came out, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago, maybe a little less than that, and people were bombarding me. I know that's usually for one of 3 reasons. 1, a stupid movie came out on Netflix. 2, a clip of a stupid movie is going around, most likely on Twitter or TikTok. And 9 times out of 10, it's a movie I've already reviewed. Killer Sofa, there's a video for it. Or 3, Mac Does It did a video on it. I saw the requests for Lamageddon. We'll get there eventually. Today we're talking about number 1. Netflix done release some shit again. Today we're talking about Netflix's new steamy psychological thriller that is, of course, none of those 3 things. Not steamy, not psychologically intriguing, and certainly not thrilling. Deadly Illusions. If you just look at the movie on a very surface level, maybe a trailer, maybe hearing briefly what it's about, it sounds like a scandalous affair between an older woman who's married and has kids and yada yada, who ends up having sex with her nanny in this like lesbian secret love affair, right? But when you actually watch it, it's very much so giving creepy older woman being very voyeuristic and in this weird like mommy dom little girl dynamic that's very, very off-putting. Incredibly rapey and uncomfortable. And they somehow mix that with like a cheating psychedelic fantasy. And it goes absolutely as wrong as you'd expect it to go with all those different adjectives in one sentence. It's awful. But I will say, and this is slightly as a side note, I really do believe when I watch movies that movies like this, and I've said this before in the series, but when you watch a movie like this, especially one that's been distributed by Netflix, it really does hone in that you can make whatever you want, kids. You can do it. Believe in yourself. This shit got distributed on Netflix and you think your screenplay couldn't make it? Kendall, I don't think that my story about a humble girl moving to the big city would make it. Just write the story. You can do it, all right? The world is burning. Just write the damn screenplay. I did notice that for some reason this movie doesn't have the little N on it. My theory is that it was made for like theaters, the horror, and then Netflix kind of just picked it up. But I do find it interesting that they don't even want to really claim it. Incredibly disorienting. Nothing really makes sense, but not in a way that's like thought-provoking in the way that I think they were trying to go for. It just doesn't make sense. It's like plot holes. It's like, no, you didn't give us something thought-provoking. It was just you didn't finish anything. Like at some point, it's not a joyride. It's like, where are we going? We driving off the Grand Canyon. Like, I have questions. But I will say, much like other films in this general genre, I do recommend it just because it's bad. Bad in a way that is really hard to put your fingers on. And whenever I see a movie like that, I can't help but say, other people, please enjoy this with me so that I am not alone. So with that said, this is Deadly Illusions. So our film begins with our main character. Her name is Mary. And Mary is a retired novelist. She did like fiction on thrillers and murder mysteries, you know? And according to her big ass house, she was very successful at. One day, she is approached by her like publisher people or the people that she used to work with for her other works. And they basically say, hey, release another book. Our publishing house is struggling and you're the only thing that sells, so make us a buck, like keep us alive, keep our lights on, because yours seem plenty okay. And she's basically like, no, like I'm done writing, been there, done that, don't want to write anymore. And around this time is when I realized that this movie really is nothing but a big budget Lifetime movie. Line delivery. It is some of the weirdest. It's giving very much freshman year college acting class that you did for like an elective credit, but you didn't really commit, you know? If you're watching Lifetime, you know to expect some hot and spicy queso. Like you're expecting some cheese. You're expecting some cheddar. But when you're just watching a movie that Netflix is distributing, it's really a toss-up. It could be the best movie ever, but this one is very, you know, spraying gold paint on a turd. Woohoo! That's thick! While the woman's leaving, she basically turns to Mary and she's like, must be nice to have money and not worry about how your lights are staying on or how your kids are getting fed, but don't be too cocky, bitch.
Yet there was a time when Mary couldn't even get one publisher to read her work, and now gets to sit back and rake in residuals without a single thought to how she got there or who put her there. I am right, aren't I?
You're an employee. You work for me. The only reason you're living in cup of noodles right now is because my books are selling. Lo and behold, she's like, you should get fired. And guess what? She don't. She has her job for the rest of the movie. She does not get fired. Anyway. And they're basically trying to bully her into keeping the publishing house afloat. Which I gotta say, if I was living like this, there is no amount of bullying you could do to get me to write a single sentence. They offer her a quite big upfront amount of money, $2 million, which seems little if again you living like this. $2 million ain't no money. I mean, it is, you know what I mean? It's to me some money, but you know what I mean? If you're living in a fucking museum, but apparently to them it is a sizable amount of money. And so her husband finds out that they were offering her that amount of money, and he basically says to her like, yo, I'm gonna need you to take this because some vague business deal I did resulted in me losing half of the money in our savings. Now, This is just my Capricorn Sun, Scorpio rising talking. However, she ain't angry enough for me. I would have to kill him. He'd just have to. He'd be dead. He'd just have to be dead. Because every day I would walk around seeing this motherfucker and think, he lost half of my money. I mean, granted, he might be making some money as well. He might be also successful, but that's my money. That's my money that I made selling thriller smut to a bunch of like wine moms across America. That's my money. He would have to die. And that's just how it is. I'm sorry. But apparently it doesn't bother her as much as it bothers me. She's just like, okay, well, I guess I'll have to acquire this economic burden and just write a new book. I mean, I guess they want us to believe outside of this blunder, he's a good man. Every time they show them together, they're having some form of sexual exchange. 9 times out of 10, it's him giving her oral sex. And I guess that's supposed to be like, he's a good guy outside of this, being completely and utterly destructive of the consent of their finances as a married couple. But you know, he does eat the pussy without being asked. He's obviously a good guy. But alas, she's decided to start writing again. But now, if she's going to start writing, she has a new issue. She's going to need a way to find time to do all that writing because it takes up a lot of her like time, particularly in taking care of her kids. And also because, as she tells our black friend that we don't get the name for most of the movie, so I'm just gonna call her black friend because that's all we knew her as for most of it. She ends up telling black friend that she turns into a different person when she writes, alluding to her not really liking this person that she turns into when she writes. But the black friend is like, hey, you should really think about getting a sitter and get like one of those fancy sitters that are like from these like Ivy League schools and who have all this background and all this training, and that would be really good for you as you write and also for your kids. They cook, they clean, they do everything. They're like Wonder Woman. It's great. The black friend ends up giving her a card, which she swiftly puts down, and she's like, I don't want somebody else raising my kids. And she's like, just think it over. So what does she do? She eventually goes into the nanny company and ends up talking to them about potentially getting a nanny for her kids. The company ends up sending a bunch of like young, maybe 18 to 21-year-old girls to babysit, and they have this very like non-funny comedic run-through interview of each of the girls, and they're kind of like airheaded. They're supposed to be kind of airheaded and silly and not really up to par. The last person to come in is none other than Grace. When Grace arrives, there's this very creepy version of Frère Jacques. That's definitely how you say that. Dormez-vous, that one. And that's kind of indicative of the kind of way that they show Grace. Now, this is one of my biggest gripes. There's 2 big gripes I have about this movie. One, pose Grace as this very like infantile person. Apparently she's of age, as we find through like context clues that she's probably a bit over 21. However, they very much so paint her in this like creepy, doll-like, child-like, innocent thing. A thing of which the other characters are big on vocalizing that they notice. They are very big on saying like she's so childlike, she's so innocent, but they also want to her through the entire movie, and it's very, very creepy. And from the jump, you have that Grace has this weird maternal and sexual attraction to Grace that is so off-putting the entire movie. And that's why I'm sitting here like, are y'all trying to paint this as like sexy? Because again, they use the words like steamy in the description. I'm like, I don't think that's the right word we should use here. It's a little weird, dog. So Mary ends up having this immediate attraction to Grace, and she also notices very quickly that she's able to get along quite well with her kids. And after some banter about books, Mary eventually decides to hire her. So pretty early in the movie, I don't remember exactly when, but the black friend, as they always tend to, is one of the first to notice that Grace is a little weird. Grace is a little different. And the moment I noticed that she was noticing that, I was like, oh, well, she gonna die. She's a black friend that notices something's wrong. Oh, hell no, she not gonna make it. But anyway, Grace starts working at the house, and everything with her is great at first. But she's attentive, she's considerate, she's respectful of their alone time as a family to be a family. She's quick to help Grace if there's a problem around the house. She just seems perfect, right? Don't they always? And all the while, Mary is becoming more and more fascinating. She's becoming creepier. She's becoming very, very creepy. She like randomly takes her bra shopping and goes in the dressing room with her as she's like changing and trying on bras. It's so creepy. That one, that is your employee? That is your boss? Why are you buying bras with her in the first place? But even if you were going to overstep that like boundary, why are you in the dressing room with her? Like I was alluding to before, there is this weird like maternalness going through the movie that I find so f***ing creepy. And it's a quality that is not at all discouraged in this movie at all. At no point are people like, she's not your child, stop acting like that. Especially in combination with this like sexual. And I think the big problem I have is that I think a lot of people aren't reading this as threatening because she's a woman. And also, again, there's this kind of weird maternal thing that she's doing. And I'm like, no. Anyway, while they're in there, Grace is like, well, since you want to grab a titty, here's one. And I'm like, nasty. What is happening? Now, throughout these scenes, there are other scenes of Mary just struggling to come up with ideas for her book. So she's like looking at the ceiling, smoking a relaxing Cuban cigar. But instead of finding interest in what her new novel will be about, she's finding more interest in being a voyeuristic, perverted bitch. This chick is watching Grace get dressed. Let me warn you, she's not gonna get reprimanded in really any real way about this. They kind of place this under like, well, Grace had this inexplicable effect on people around her and she had this just pull that made people enthralled with her. Oh, it's not because Mary's a fucking creeper. It's Grace's fault. She had this like inexplicable pull. She was never even into women, but she met Grace. She couldn't help herself from being a fucking peeper Tom. Tell that to the police. Tell that as your reason. Weirdo. Now, while talking to her business people, particularly the one that should have got fired for flipping off at the mouth, she's basically like, hey, here's an idea for your new book. We're gonna pitch an idea. We should make it so that the main character ends up being the bad guy. And they go about this very transparent and clumsy attempt at foreshadowing. Maybe the person that's actually awful here is the mother. It's not even good foreshadowing. I already know that. She's being fucking creepy this entire movie. It's not like a, oh my god, really? A twist? If she ends up being trash even more so by the end of the movie, it's not a twist. We saw it coming. She's been trashed this entire film. But I think they were trying to turn this into like a clumsy explanation of like, she was just looking for something more as she like fantasizes about Grace. Also, as a side note, I don't know who the hell edited this movie, but you deserve to get punched in the face because I've never seen somebody completely and utterly abuse cross-fade transitions the way that this movie does, both visually and audibly. Yikes. It's giving very much so like early 2000s Cinemax porno. Unnerved by her inexplicable attraction to Grace, Mary goes to Black Friend and she's like, yo, I'm like very attracted to her. What's going on? Black Friend is like, have you ever been attracted to a woman before? Is this new? And she's like, no, I've never been attracted to a woman before. This is like a very new experience for me. Do you think it's because you're not having enough sex with your husband? And she's like, no, my husband is great. And then this is when Mary just explicitly vocalizes that weird like child seductress dichotomy that they're trying to make. And she just says it.
Like this innocent young child, you know? And then the next minute, it's like she's this master seductress.
Ew. And again, this entire movie paints it like Grace is the problem. She has this inexplicable pull for these people. And I'm like, I would argue they might be just creepy. They might just be creepers. That might just be it. And then to continue on this whole thing that makes no sense, the Black Friend is like, well, maybe that's just what she wants. She wants to seduce you and break up you guys. And again, I'm assuming this is supposed to be the black person has like the sixth sense to be able to, you know, smell when something's afoot. But I guess for some reason she can't sniff out that her best friend is a fucking sexual deviant. Like, how are you blaming Grace for existing? That's your fault. You're a friggin' weirdo. Like, it's giving me like girl boss rapists. Girls can be sexual predators too. Rapists, but put pink glitter on it. Like, no. And it just makes my skin crawl. It's so nasty. But anyway, there's this whole scene where Grace is like, I've never felt more loved and appreciated and safe and cared for than by Mary, which again makes me feel incredibly uncomfortable as I'm watching it. It could be that this movie was going for that, but the way that people are kind of marketing this movie is more so on the sexiness of it. They're relying a lot on this like sexy quote unquote thing, and it's like, this isn't sexy. This is incredibly uncomfortable and really, really frightening. We have a whole other problem if that's where we're at as an audience talking about this movie, but okay. But she's like, yeah, I've never felt more loved or appreciated. And I'm just like, this is your employer. She's like, ugh, not me trying to talk and do this. But yeah, Grace is over here like, oh my God, I've never felt more loved and appreciated than I do at my job. This is your employer. And she's like, you guys treat me so well, and like, blah, 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 blah. Comfort type thing. And the next thing you know, she has a dream about Grace sucking on a titty. So about the titty sucking. So apparently, Mary thinks that actually happened, but apparently it was just a dream. So she goes up to Grace and she's like, this can never happen again. And she's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, exactly. Thank you. This never happened. Then the next scene, Mary's in a bath, and then all of a sudden here comes Grace with like milk and honey and rose petals, and she comes in and there's this like super sensual and sexual like pouring of the milk into the bath and giving her a massage, and then the next thing you know, she's giving her the numericals. One of the thoughts I had was like, there's bath salts in that. Can that give you an infection? I'm obviously asking the important questions here. But after the strumming reaches a dramatic climax, suddenly Grace is gone. Mary doesn't know if this really happened or if it didn't really happen, but what she does know is that there are now roses in the bath. So presumably, it did actually happen. The husband ends up taking Grace to go to get some lunch, just a platonic little worker-employee lunch situation. And while they're driving, Black Friend, who sees it all, sees them driving in the same car, and she's like, what's that all about? And she immediately assumes your husband's fucking the babysitter, and will of course most likely be the only person that dies because of this foreshadowing knowledge. But anyway, while at lunch, Grace and the husband are talking. I think his name is Tom, who cares? And he, shocker, starts to feel inexplicably enthralled by her. And he notes this by saying something along the lines of like, how old are you? Because right now you could either be a kid or 40. That is so creepy. I really like this side of you. And she hadn't really done anything but ordered quiche and a Bloody Mary. But anyway, they flirt. And then later it's kind of confirmed that at some point they ended up having sex. For some reason, they don't show that happening. Grace and Mary go to the river, filling each other up at the river, and end up making out. And while they're making out, Mary says something along the lines of like, I see so much of myself in you. Interesting, because I was sitting here like, so is that it? That she's not actually attracted to women, she's just attracted to herself? So is this like an age gap self-cessed thing? Also, did they actually make out this time? And I suppose, yes, they actually did this time. Anyway, they had gotten out by the river by taking some bikes, and when they get back to the bike, someone had slashed the tires. To get back, they decide to walk their bikes back from the river. Child, all this money you got, you couldn't get someone to pick you up? And when they get back, they see Mary's husband and the Black Friend talking to each other. And they were like, oh, we took a trip to the river. You know, that place that me and my husband went, and that was very special to us, but I took the nanny. Tom kind of says as a snide remark, like, okay, well, I'd like to go with you next time. So the Black Friend, the reason she came is because she wanted to warn her best friend about Grace. Instead of just saying, hey, I saw your nanny out with your man, she basically says like, oh, if you're not having sex, when's the last time you had sex with him? Because like, if he's not getting it from you, he's getting it from somewhere else. And I'm sitting here like, okay, even if you have information, honey, this ain't how you do it. First of all, why did you go to the husband first? Why didn't you go to your friend first? Mary's like, why were you talking to my husband at nighttime anyway? Which is a fair question. And she basically just doesn't believe her at all. At the end of it, they have an argument and she basically sends her on her way. Fast forward and Grace start eating kitty in the kitchen. And this time actually happens, I believe. And then Mary decides to go take a nap. And then when she arises from her nap, she sees her husband eating the kitty in the kitchen, but eating Grace's kitty. And apparently that didn't really happen. Keep up. I know. Trust me, it doesn't get any easier. By the way, there's just a lot of coochie eating in this movie. Unnecessary amounts of coochie eating, but okay. Sometimes we really gotta ask ourselves, how much is too much? Basically, she wakes up from her nap. She notices that Grace is trying to have dinner with them. You're my employee. Why are you eating here? And I'm sitting here like, girl, we already crossed all that. You made things inappropriate, so. But she's like, oh, okay, well, I'll leave. And then Mary just goes on an outburst and she was like, he was eating your coochie in our kitchen! Like in front of the kids and everybody. Just losing her shit. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? This thing that she's all screaming about didn't actually happen. They do end up having an affair, by the way, again, off camera. But I don't think this particular scene actually happened. So she's like, yeah, you were eating her coochie in my kitchen. I just found this so funny and hypocritical because she's been fantasizing about having sex with this woman the entire movie, also like making out with her and having inappropriate sexual contact with this woman this entire movie. But the thought that her husband was doing the same was enough to say, maybe we shouldn't be fucking people on payroll. Bitch. Anyway, but given how inappropriate this entire outburst was, everyone's like, hey, you scaring the kid, like the kid's at the table. And the way she kind of quells their fears is by saying, look, when mommy writes, she kind of doesn't know where reality ends and fantasy begins, right? The scene is awful, by the way, acting wise, and even like line wise. It's just terrible because it's supposed to be, to be honest with you, it's supposed to be this like big climax scene of all these emotions, like what is real, what is fantasy, yada yada yada, coming to fruition. And it's funny because like I felt none of the like anxiety that she felt, or that I'm supposed to think that she's feeling. I just started laughing, and that's an ongoing theme with this movie. Like any scene that was supposed to be like thrilling for the most part just made me laugh or make me go ugh. I was just either greatly uncomfortable or I was laughing, or I was laughing because I was greatly uncomfortable. Soon after this scene, we're about an hour and 20-ish minutes into this 2-hour movie, which is far too long for this type of movie, by the way. This could have been on Lifetime. You could have trimmed a bunch of the fat and then added some commercials, and this could have been on Lifetime. Around this time, she finally gets angry about her husband losing all that damn money. And I'm like, bitch, you should have gotten mad when he first told you. You over here waiting an hour and a half into the movie, so like weeks. And I'm sitting here like, see, this is why you should have killed him when I said. But no, you wanted to wait an hour and 15 minutes into the movie to say, hey, I think I'm mad about that now. That's on you, sis. You should have got mad when you should have got mad, because you wouldn't have to deal with any of this if you would have killed him. Around this time, I really realized, wow, this is a boring ass movie. Again, this is a movie that could have been done so quickly, but instead they wanted to draw it out and make it 2 hours, which is far too long for a movie like this. That's when they decided to deliver the twist. Mary calls the agency for the nannies because she notices that she has a check that she sent over to them that was never cashed. While they're on the phone, the company lady is like, well, yeah, we're holding on to it because basically you haven't picked your nanny yet, so we haven't cashed the check yet. We've been meaning to call you, but we've been so busy, like we hadn't gotten around to it. And this is when we start to descend into Netflix Death Note level nonsensical bull. They are going to make this super convoluted story to explain how Mary hired a woman who was never on the roster at this place. Basically, the agency says that we've never had a woman named Grace that works here. And I'm sitting here like, I have so many questions and they will be left unanswered, I'm very, very sure. She's had no contact with the agency since she hired a person. She didn't call them and tell them who she wanted. 2, a business said to you, sorry, we've been too busy to cash your check. There ain't no way in the hell that anybody handling any business would be like, we're too busy to make money. In a business, the goal is to make money. So I highly doubt that they would put that on the back burner. How did Mary even know that there was a job opening? How did she get this job, or fake getting this job? Well, apparently in that one tiny scene where the black chick and Mary were talking about getting a nanny, Mary had dropped the little card. Apparently Grace was working at that spa and picked up that card and tried to apply to be a nanny at the agency, where they turned her down. She has 2 scenes in which she had like a nice version of her getting turned down from the job and then a mean version of her getting turned down from the job. This doesn't make sense. Grace has 2 sides to her, which is what they've been alluding to with this like innocent child and seductress person, mean and convoluted person.
I'm sure you'll find a nice family who needs your help. Plenty of them exist. Bitch.
Thank you for seeing me so soon. I really appreciate it.
Which is weird because being sexual and sensual are not the same as being mean. Was it that on the inside she wanted to call this woman a bitch? But that doesn't make sense because the woman responds to her. So did this happen twice? Is this like one is an alternate reality where she was a bitch and then another one where she wasn't a bitch? She was like nice and gracious, like if you need anything, like they don't. I know they thought this was thought-provoking. But it's actually just stupid. But before she leaves, by the way, at this interview, the interviewer just leaves without saying anything to go check on the kids at this daycare, basically. Just left Grace in a room with a bunch of confidential information that she goes scouring through on who to go to offer a nanny job. Because that makes sense. Now I'm gonna fast forward some other stuff that makes no sense. She goes to a library to get Mary's information. That's not how that works, whatever. So the black friend, none of us saw this coming, winds up dead, stabbed in the neck with a pair of scissors that apparently came from Mary's house. They bring Mary down to the station and immediately she is prime suspect number one, because apparently witnesses say that she was having an argument with her best friend the day before she ended up dead. Her prints are all over these scissors, which isn't evidence because if they were from her home, everyone's prints would be on those scissors. But they say the prime information that they have that she probably did it is because they have footage of Mary strutting to her office at like 1 o'clock in the morning. By the way, if you're starting to notice around this time, we got too many movies going on in one movie, you are correct. Her husband comes down to the station and basically tells her like, we're getting you a lawyer, yada, yada, yada. But they also found your fingerprints on the knife that slashed your bike tires. What? Why were the police even looking into that? Let alone how they tied those two things into being into the black woman. Her name is Elaine, by the way. The black woman's name is Elaine. Into Elaine's death. This is when we find out her name's Elaine, by the way. An hour and a half into the movie. We figured out the weapon in that tire murder. And for some reason, we figured out that the same fingerprints were on the weapon that killed Elaine, because those two things have anything to do with each other. So, okay. So apparently Mary, in some psychosis, cut her own tires. She may have also, while in this mental state, killed Elaine. Apparently, another thing we learn about Elaine way too late in this movie is that she's also a psychotherapist, and apparently had worked with Mary at some point, which is also a conflict of interest. Like, why are they friends? Anywho, she took notes that Mary had out-of-body experiences. During those out-of-body experiences, she couldn't really account for her actions. But wait, apparently, I know you're so confused. I know, follow me. I know it's bad. In fairness, it doesn't make any sense. But apparently, she didn't actually do those things because apparently Grace did them. Mary ends up finding Grace's aunt in like another state, and basically the aunt has this whole suspenseful, you're not from around here, are you? You don't know Grace's story. Well, apparently she was in a very abusive home. She came to live with her aunt because of that. Apparently the aunt also has split personalities that result in her speaking like, you know, the average middle-aged woman. And then the next thing you know, she sounds like that living vertebrae from SpongeBob, Chocolate, indicating that, again, she has split personalities. Perhaps also how Grace has split personalities, and perhaps also how Mary has split personalities. Now, for some reason, based off of this information, Mary believes that Grace is greatly dangerous. So dangerous that she must race back home and warn her husband. And I'm just sitting here like, pardon? Like, what information did you find that was like, she's gonna murder you? Like, how did you even connect her to the murder of Elaine? Because I assume that's what she's doing. That's why she thinks she's dangerous. Like, how did you reach this conclusion? All you did was find out that she had a diagnosis, which you also have. So like, what? And also, again, how is she the creeper here when you've been a voyeuristic rapey this entire film, but suddenly she's the danger here? Like, okay. Fear not, this movie continues to disintegrate. Because apparently, Grace is the murderer, and now she is trying to kill the husband. This is where we hear lines that allude to them actually having sex at some point. And he's like, I don't want to do this anymore. You seduced me. And so she stabs him. And again, in another situation that I'm supposed to be taking this seriously, I burst out laughing. Truly just a masterpiece of attempted seriousness. As a matter of fact, we're around at the last 10 minutes of the movie, and the rest of this movie is hilarious, I gotta say. It's so campish and so poorly written and executed. It's just so bad. Grace turns back into her innocent side, right? When Mary comes home, Mary finds the body, she's freaking out, and Grace is like, oh my God, okay, I'm gonna call the ambulance. And then she switches to her like evil side, who's named Margaret. And we know that she switches because she turns around and she's like, I tried to stop her.
You tried to stop who?
Me, you cunt. Killer bitch.
Someone put a house beat on it. Someone take Killer Bitch and Me You Cunt, turn it into a house beat. Give me a Vogue track called Killer Bitch. Dun, 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 Killer Bitch. Dun, 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 Killer Bitch. Dun, 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 dun. I'll see you after the function. But yeah, something about this entire part of the movie, the pacing, body motion, it's giving very like, this is a very specific church camp play where the like small town girl is raised to keep the face, but the devil keeps tempting her to like fornicate. How did she get past you? Also, why didn't she finish up the husband? He's gonna survive, by the way. There's a tussle. Grace gets scalped. I'm tender-headed. That hurt me. She does this whole like evil monologue about how she used to play this game with her brother and he would bribe her with food when they were starving, and she would play as a girl named Margaret. They kind of allude to this being like a sexual assault situation, but they don't really. I'm just guessing that's what happened. This Margaret character in my mind kept me alive through the hardest times of my life, and now you meet this woman and you're trying to act like she's the best thing that you've ever met. In fairness, she's pretty trash too. Long story short, Mary ends up hitting her in the head with a vase. And for some reason after that, she's like hurt, but still conscious. Grace is like, don't give up on me. And she's like, I won't. And this weird, again, maternal exchange that's really creepy to me. And that's basically the end of the movie. Like, all is well with the world. The husband survives. Mary survives. The only person that didn't survive is the black friend, because no one thought she was making it out. Mary has finished her manuscript for her book that she leaves on Elaine's grave. I'm dead. What the fuck? I can't read. I'd like to be breathing, but I had to die because yo dumbass had a casualty. Anyway, Mary comes to visit Grace, who is not in prison apparently. She's actually at like a mental hospital where she plays little childish games and has childish drawings, and Mary comes to visit her as if she's like her parents, I guess. She killed a person, attempted to kill 2 others. People have gone to life in prison for much less than this, with just as many mental illnesses as she's had. And then in the final scene of the movie, Mary leaves the hospital wearing the same clothes of whoever went to kill Elaine. That's the end of the movie. I am speechless. This movie is so trash in so many ways. Outside of just the logistics, bad acting, bad editing, bad writing, the movie just makes no damn sense. And it's also very creepy in a way that I think they were trying to ignore, like in a way that they didn't account for. And I'm like, how did you not account for this? A lot of this movie was depending on like it being thought-provoking, when instead it just left a bunch of stuff unwritten. It's called plot holes. Why was no one arrested? Who killed Elaine and why? Why are we not finding out at all about Mary's second personality? I feel like that's a big one. We learned about everybody else having second personalities, but why did y'all start so many different storylines and finish none of them? Does Mary just not want to smash her anymore? Have we established that or not? Is she just a mother figure now? Does she just come to check on her at the hospital? And also, probably the biggest gripe that one could have with a movie like this, the same way I feel about psycho stalker movies in general, I have mixed feelings about, and I've vocalized this many times, but when movies in particular focus on a relatively specific mental illness and allude to that being why they're like murderous killers and stuff, it does leave a bad taste in my mouth. True, to be a psycho stalker, you have to have something wrong with you, but everyone that has something wrong with them isn't a psycho stalker. And this one seems even more specific. It's like people with multiple personality disorders like DID and stuff like that. And it rubs me the wrong way. I guess I should ask more poignantly, what is the best way to do movies that are about like murderers and criminals and stuff like that? Because I don't actually know how to answer that. Like, it's hard for me to explicitly answer that mental illness should be completely taken out of these conversations about like violence. But I also feel like it disproportionately reflects people with mental illness as violent and criminal. And I don't really know what balance to strike with that. But I think representation of mental illness that has nothing to do with violence would be very helpful. I don't know if that means don't make movies that have violence in them that also have people with mental illnesses. Am I making sense? But anyway, with a movie like this and something so poignant, specifically referring to people with multiple personalities, DID, those types of disorders, it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Anyway, so there you have it. Another non-sexy, sexy movie. Really creepy, sexy movie. Y'all make a lot of these. Maybe I take it back. Maybe I don't recommend this movie. It's not worth your time. It really isn't. It's on Netflix though, as all of the worst things are. If you want something to hate watch, It's there for your consumption. Anywho, if you like this video, feel free to like this video. Follow me on all my social media, Instagram, Twitter, sometimes TikTok, all of which are KennieJD. If you have more bad movie suggestions, feel free to put those down in my comment section, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!